And that's also how you learn to walk. It wasn't because you figured anything out, but because something primal in you recognized gravity and responded. It wasn't knowledge, it wasn't insight, it wasn't philosophy, it wasn't instruction. It was the body discovering the situation it was already in. It was instinct meeting gravity. There's this popular notion in spirituality, especially in the contemporary sources, that the whole enterprise isn't a teaching. It's not a knowledge, right? It's not conceptual. And to be fair, this is something I would say as well. So how can you listen to videos about something that's non-conceptual? How can you meet and talk about something that isn't knowledge, right? That isn't in any way based in thought. So let me give you an analogy and ask you this. How do you know which way is down? Down. Because you do know, right? If you can really call it a knowing, because it's more like you feel it immediately and unshakably, even if you don't think about it. So now tilt your head left, right. You can even wobble it a little. You can, if you want, you can even turn it completely sideways, like literally lie down on your shoulder and look at the horizon. The world doesn't rotate with your head, does it? But if you were to tilt a camera while taking a photo, the whole frame would skew. And your own experience doesn't seem to do that. Somehow everything stays upright. And it's quite strange when you actually stop to notice it. Your head can move in every direction and the horizon doesn't follow your skull. Something in you seems to just know which way is up and which way is down. And to the best of my knowledge, that's your vestibular system. It's doing its work quietly in the background. It stabilizes your gaze, keeps the world from distorting. It's acting like an anchor so your sense of upright doesn't collapse. And this is something you don't have to work at. You don't reason your way into it. It's self-evident and it feels completely fundamental. And it was self-evident long before you had any thoughts, long before you started using language, long before you developed an idea of a me. It's the older parts of your nervous system. They're already doing the work. The brainstem helps you balance, orient, lining you up with gravity, giving you a sense of direction in a world you don't even have to understand conceptually. And that's also how you learn to walk. It wasn't because you figured anything out, but because something primal in you recognized gravity and responded. It wasn't knowledge, it wasn't insight, it wasn't philosophy, it wasn't instruction. It was the body discovering the situation it was already in. It was instinct meeting gravity. A child doesn't know what a body is. A child doesn't understand walking. But once that basic pull is sensed, that this way is down, everything starts organizing around it. And then you step, you fall, you shift, you adjust, rinse and repeat, and there you go. There's walking. So that orientation appears first, and then movement grows out of it. And that's a really good analogy to what happens in our meetings, because it's not conceptual. It's not based on beliefs. It's more like recognizing a direct, simple bearing underneath all the noise. And what we're doing in the meetings is trying to create conditions for that initial discovery, that moment before the first step, the gravity moment. That's what we're looking for to experience together. And it's not by giving more ideas, not by offering a new interpretation, but by creating space where something more basic can surface, something that feels like a preconceptual reference point, and it doesn't depend on the story in any way. And I know we would like to see something elevated and experience something transcendent, but what really shows up is more ordinary than that, but it's also completely, totally fundamental. It's something that's already running and doesn't need belief or understanding. And once that orientation is noticed, even briefly, it's like something in you begins to respond to it. And it doesn't happen through practice. It's not some technique. It's in the same way the body once aligned itself around gravity without being taught anything. It feels precognitive because it happens beneath that layer that tries to describe, understand, and manage everything. So what I'm trying to say is that what happens is a grounding in something natural, already active. It's just coming back online once the story thins a little. So you could say, although that would be a story in and of its own, that it's the same intelligence that helped you stand up before you knew what standing meant. And once that grounding is sensed, everything seems to rearrange itself without any effort. There's no strategy involved, no intention, no planning, no practice. It really is like learning to walk. The orientation shows itself and the movement follows. It's like something in you recognizes it instantly, and it's something natural, already here, something we seem to be wired for. And that's also what this analogy is pointing to, the fact that something can be learned but without concepts, that learning can happen precognitively. You don't need to know what walking was in order to start walking. And in the same way, this doesn't depend on your understanding in any way. And that's why after the meetings, you don't really need any kind of spiritual practice to keep it going. You don't need to repeat exercises or maintain a state. It's not about building a skill. It's really about exposing yourself to that sensing enough times that it becomes obvious. And then the nervous system does what it already knows how to do. So you don't need to rely on knowledge. You don't need to rely on instruction. You don't need to rely on anybody, and that's including me. You just stand on your own 2 feet, and once you're standing, you don't think about walking anymore. You just walk.